What's up, friends? It's another edition of ACC Baseball Etc. presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Prepare for takeoff because Academy Sports and Outdoors is your new home for Jordan Brand. Gear up today and take flight on the court, off the court, and above the court. Make your play in the latest head-to-toe Jordan gear for the entire family, available in-store and at academy.com. Elevated styles and shoes for everyone. Unstoppable value every day. Unleash your greatness with Jordan at Academy Sports and Outdoors. I'm Daron Vaught. Danny Graves, the Miami Hurricanes and Cincinnati Reds Hall of Famer, is here. And we've got ACC Extras, Bradley Smart, with us as well to talk about what we saw in Durham. We were all at the ACC Baseball Championship to see North Carolina capture the title. And look ahead now that we've got a field of 64. We have regionals to discuss and a lot of baseball coming up the next couple of weekends. So, gents, how are we? How was travel back for both of you?
Mine was great. I don't know where you live, Bradley. Mine was pretty simple. I had a middle seat open on both flights back, which was fantastic. Never happens.
That is nice. My flight was also like empty. There were probably like 15 to 20 people on it. So I had the whole next row in front of me. But I had an early flight Tuesday morning, and the only downside, I stubbed my toe while frantically trying to get to my scheduled Uber at 5 a.m. I kicked, because I was in an Airbnb, not familiar, it's dark, just kicked like the side of the bed unbelievably hard. So that was the tough part of the travel. Everything else went well, but now I've got like a pinky toe that's it's in some pain. We're battling through it.
But you're still able to work, right? Because I've had teammates that have gone on the IL for kicking a bedpost with their pinky toe. So
we're staying off the IL for now.
Nice.
Good. Excellent. Wonderful to hear.
What about your travel, Professor?
Mine's good. It was a home game for me. Come on. I drove home. I was back before you guys had even thought about getting a flight at home. It's all good. So it was great. It's great. Good times to and fro Durham Bulls Athletic Park this week. So I want to start with general thoughts, general takeaways from the tournament, because we've got a new format that we can discuss with the knowledge now of how it panned out for certain bubble teams, maybe. We have our experience in the moment with the new format, how we liked it there, and, anything that stood out from a team performance wise, right? So let's start. I was in a discussion yesterday with someone who covers Virginia, and it occurred to us that perhaps, and maybe it wouldn't have made all that much of a difference, but perhaps the old pool play format would have been better for Virginia in this instance, trying to work their way into the field of 64, because after losing an initial game to BC, they would have gotten a couple more cracks at it, maybe even against higher RPI teams than Boston College. I am of the belief that over the long haul, this format serves bubble teams well. And I think it's a large piece of why it was approved and why it has now been implemented. Bradley, I'll start with you. I'm curious on your thoughts about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right with thinking of it as like, oh, Virginia might have had more chances even with the loss. But if they were the 6 in the pool and they lost their first game, they're only really getting another, right? Because it's the top, most likely only getting another. Confirmed only getting another. Yeah. So I don't think, and based on the way they played in that game, and I know it was late, but that's really on them. Like, even in pool play, they would have, if they'd lost the first game, they get the second. If they'd won, they'd have to win again. So I think it's tough for them for sure, but I don't think that should be a takeaway of the bracket. Because, I mean, on the other side too, you have Notre Dame, golden opportunity to play itself in, even with just one win and then you play another, a higher RPI team. But, they obviously couldn't get it done either. So I think the format was good in that regard. Obviously, the two ACC bubble teams didn't do what they needed to do, but that's more of a team problem than I think the bracket problem. And also Boston College, credit to them. That was one of the stories of the tournament for sure. They go into the seventh inning against North Carolina, with a lead. So I thought that was a really cool story that you wouldn't have seen in the old format, most likely. So I think I like the way the bracket went. I think my only qualm is the 4 games and putting 4 games on each of the first 2 days and setting a set schedule that just won't happen is tough. Like I think it's a discredit to those night teams where you don't get. The crowds are going to be weird to start this weekend. It's the middle of the week, but I do think starting games that late is just not great for viewership, players, or even the fans.
Yeah, players don't want to play at 9 a.m. or at 11 at night. If you're awake at 11 at night and you're not working, then you're probably partying somewhere, not playing baseball. So, yeah, that's tough. But I agree with both of you. I think in the long run, this format is great, and they had their chances. I believe. I think Virginia had every opportunity, and Notre Dame, Bradley, like they had every opportunity to get to the next step and put more pressure on the committee. I don't think this is the way that the format was set up. That's not the reason they didn't make it. I think listening yesterday to the great Mike Rooney, why don't we just go to 68 teams and be done with it? He said that on the selection show thing yesterday, because I know there was a couple of other teams. I guess Troy was one of the other teams that he mentioned. Was it Southeast Louisiana, possibly? Mm-hmm. I don't know. A couple of other teams that he mentioned that, if you add 4 more, then I don't think there's anybody really complaining too much about this process. But they had their chances, and this format I think is beautiful, except for the 4 games first 2 days.
Yeah, I think, Gravy, you just said it. Nobody wants to play at 9 a.m. or the late game. I don't know about that in 2025 anymore. I think guys liked the 9 a.m. game.
The hitters do.
Yeah.
And even Michael New was saying that too. Like his hitters couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to go out there and swing. But the pitchers, it's a different story. It's tough to pitch when you're still got like eye boogers in your eyes and stuff,
What kind of takeaways did we have regarding certain teams? And we can maybe start with the champions, North Carolina. I'll begin just by saying, look, they went through a couple of regional hosts to earn that championship, and Florida State was a great game. Clemson was rather depleted on the pitching side by the time the two met, but still you're dominating what has been a really, really good baseball team all season long. I thought it was incredibly impressive for North Carolina. I think, and guys, both of you've heard me talk about this team. I have not been high on this team for a lot of the year. I think they are rounding into a form that makes them a legitimate national championship contender.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I think that the questions were valid to start the year around. It wasn't about the pitching, obviously. Like we knew they were going to throw well. Probably didn't realize Jake Knapp was going to do what he did. But we knew they had arms, both, in the rotation and then obviously in the bullpen. I think what's been so impressive is how this lineup has really found its identity as the year's gone on. And like, I look at that, Clemson game, they push across a run in the first kind of because of an error, but right off the bat, Kepley, Vanderbrake, they're seeing like 8 or 9 pitches each. Like they're working, counts, and neither of them did anything that inning. But, you get later in the game, Kepley's getting on base, stealing 2 bags. Vanderbrake's hitting a home run. He had a monster weekend. And I think just up and down that lineup, even with the freshmen at the bottom, like they're able to execute everything they need to. Like they just out executed Florida State. And Link said that after in those late inning situations, they got the bunts down. They moved runners over. They took the extra base, like groundouts moved a guy second to third. And I think when the offense is doing that and you have the depth on the mound that they have, like Ryan Lynch in the championship game, that is a guy who was a reliever. Yes, stretched out reliever, but a reliever the whole year. That's a guy that's going to be a number one in a rotation. You know, maybe not next year, but, you know, year after. Like it's up to 97 with, you know, more than 20 inches of horizontal break. Like it's disgusting. And then he also shows, you know, guts as a freshman to get out of a bases loaded jam, and that sort of tips it, and then it just snowballs. But I look at North Carolina and I see, you know, they can hit for average, they can hit for power now. They've got guys that are going deep. They have a bullpen, even without Mateus. Like they have freshmen that are clearly ready for the moment. And the starting pitching is fantastic. Like we're just listing everything you want out of a national title contender. So I came out of there really excited about North. I picked them to win it going in. I saw it as, you know, this is a weekend for them. They just have to win 3 games. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, it was a weekend series for them. And I was really, first of all, they're going to be the national champions. I'm just going to throw it out there. You guys probably are agreeing. I think that's what it sounds like. They are the most solid team. And what solidifies it for me is because I thought Aiden Houck did awesome coming in relief for that amount of time that he was in there, as opposed to what he's been feeling like. I don't know what his health issues or just fatigue, whatever it was. I thought he looked great in the game that he came in. But dude, McDuffie, that kid is freaking lights out. I would put him in any situation of any single game and have no problem just knowing that this dude's going to shove it. His slider is disgusting and his fastball is sneaky. I don't know what his velocity is, 93, 94. You guys know better than I do, but it's sneaky after that filthy slider. I'm convinced that he's got to be their closer throughout the rest of the season. And yeah, this team is stacked, man. Kane Kepley at the top. Love that dude. Love that dude. So yeah, that's my team. North Carolina is going to take it.
I got a couple follow-ups here. I was involved in a few conversations throughout the week, kind of talking some people off of concern for North Carolina, maybe just, you know, those who cover other teams and haven't been as plugged in with North Carolina for this season. The concern is, they're relying so much on freshmen out of the bullpen. I mean, it's been that way all year, though. You know what I mean? Like from day one, even with a healthy Mateus, it was clear that McDuffie was going to be the leverage guy, the closer guy. Ryan Lynch was going to see significant innings out of the bullpen. Even with the healthy Mateus, I'm not so sure that those two would not have already had jumped him anyway. And he would be sort of the third option out of the bullpen. So because Scott Forbes and Bryant Gaines do such a good job with the pitching staff and setting and managing expectations with their guys, and this has been a theme over several seasons, I think those guys got introduced to the idea that you're going to hold this pressure. Like they got introduced really early to that. And so now they've adjusted, and the expression would be they're not freshmen anymore. But there's kind of something to that. Now, they're going to be experiencing all of this stuff for the first time. So it was a great sign to me to see McDuffie's performance, right? And he had a save situation against the toughest part of the order that he got through it. 2 appearances, 2 saves throughout the week for McDuffie. And then Lynch in that start, Bradley, you and I were in the press box together. And as that jam was happening, and he was getting into trouble with the bases loaded, we saw the velocity decrease on the fastball. And I think you might have even said something to me verbatim as along the lines of, man, this just feels like maybe he's going to be left in too long, and it's going to implode. But he strikes out 2 in a row, and then they get the third out, and it's like he got through it. Like that is as encouraging of a sign as you could possibly have gotten if you're a North Carolina fan. And I get others played well, right? Luke Stevenson, Jackson Vanderbeek, as you mentioned, like those 2 moments were the most encouraging things for North Carolina throughout the week.
Yeah.
And it was encouraging too that Forbes didn't throw him back out there coaching on emotion like we saw earlier in the week. I think you knew he was spent, and then that was the time to get him out.
Helps to have more guys to go to when that's the case.
True.
Too, though.
Very true.
Yeah. You mentioned Aiden Houck coming out of the bullpen. This fascinates me, and this will be the last point I make about the tournament's format, because we saw the same thing in that North Carolina-Florida State semifinal with Joey Vellini coming out of the bullpen for the Seminoles. It's so interesting, and was not something about this format that I considered coming in, but it makes total sense, as Scott Forbes and Link Jarrett said after those games, or that game. They needed to make sure that their next starter got some work in before a regional the following week. So, like, think about it. If Florida State loses and they're planning on starting Joey Vellini in the championship game, he doesn't get on the mound until a regional. It's not something I had considered because of the way that those top 4 seeds approach this as, okay, it's just a weekend, right? It fascinates me and encourages me about the future of this format, because I think that makes for some really fun semifinal matchups. So just an observation. And it turned Florida State, North Carolina into an incredible game.
Yeah, and I do think that is really interesting, because we saw it with LSU piggybacking their guys, and there was a bunch of talk about it and like why you would do it and whatnot. But yeah, I do think it makes the champion, like, people just need to kind of recognize for those teams, it's not like they want to win the title 100%, but they also have their sights set on success in regionals, keeping their rotation set through. And especially for Florida State, I thought it was massive, because Joey Vellini had not thrown great. And he was sharp in relief. Like, that was really big for them to say, okay, yep, that's the Vellini we need, moving forward. But yeah, I think it's definitely a little wrinkle to it where, I think you're going to get a lot of finals like the one we got, where especially if it's not a top 4 seed, like Clemson obviously came through the single bye. If a team like that makes it might get, you might get those lopsided scores more often. But last year's final was the same way.
Yeah.
Like, it was really lopsided. So I think the semifinals, those 2 games were great.
But when you get to the finals, and I said it on our pregame show, a guy like Ryan Lynch, who hasn't had a start, but he's got a lot of innings. Now this is the world seeing that this kid has never made a start and how dominating he could be. And now all of a sudden people's going to remember his name. So you could make a career off of a postseason start. Like, it happens all the time, it seems like, in the World Series and in regionals, because guys that aren't starting, they have to start and they have to give innings. And that's what Ryan Lynch did. And I love that.
It's also a huge confidence piece for him, because look, North Carolina has not made bones about it. The plan is ideally for both McDuffie and Lynch to become starters, maybe as soon as next year. And this is where I get back to the coaching staff sort of setting and managing expectations for those guys. They've worked up to this point with Ryan Lynch. He threw a season high in pitches thrown, matched his season high in innings thrown. But like, it's been discussed, or at least implied, that, hey, eventually we want you to be a starter. So it kind of takes a little bit of that pressure off from Lynch if the understanding is, and his goal is, the team's goal is to eventually become a starter for this team, right? You don't have maybe the thought of, wow, I'm just a freshman and I'm just a reliever and I'm asked to start this game. I think there's a lot that went into that. And he came through. I mean, he obviously, we just discussed it. He came through. So yeah, super impressive what North Carolina was able to accomplish.
So McDuffie, they're saying he's potentially going to be a starter.
I think that's the plan.
This dude has the mentality, and he has the marbles for the back end. I'm telling you, I love it when he'd get somebody out or strike somebody out, walking around the mound like he was carrying his suitcases. Like, he's feeling it, man. It's tough to have that mentality, and he's already got it as a 18 or 19-year-old. He might like that back end role.
They'll just grab, 2 more freshmen next year, put them back there.
Right.
That's the thing too. I mean, they're going to lose. Not that we're getting ahead of ourselves and already looking ahead to next year. They're going to lose the ACC Pitcher of the Year. I'm not so sure the pitching staff's not going to be better next year with another year under those guys' belts. And we'll see. But anyways, what else stood out outside of North Carolina winning the whole thing? Is there any other more grand takeaways when it comes to a specific team, Bradley?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Clemson, I was pretty impressed with them. I mean, obviously, you get basically run ruled in the final, but I don't think that's anything to really worry about. I think the depth of the arms, that is a question mark. Like, once you get past, the guys they want to use a lot, like you saw some of the options they went to. But I think the way they played on Saturday against Georgia Tech really was like, okay, that's Clemson postseason baseball. Like, Georgia Tech made a few mistakes. Clemson has a bunch of guys that have been there, been in these big situations, and they just punished them. Like Jacob Jarrell, you don't get a tag down at second base. A couple batters later, Jacob Jarrell's hitting a grand slam. You run out, you run into a few base running outs on the bases. The next inning, it's like every inning Clemson scored after that would happen. So, it felt like this team has that mentality that does really well in the postseason. And that was something we were kind of worried about, if you go back like a few weeks ago when they were losing weekends and it was like, they can't get outs, they're not hitting. Like, at one point, everyone in their lineup was under 300, but I think they've really found the right mix. TP Wentworth in particular, like that is not a guy they had penciled in to be in the lineup every day. They had McClatty, Becerra, Crichton, but they've shuffled, moved guys around, and I think they found the right mix, which is exciting for me to watch moving forward.
And Cam Cannarella just plays a little bit differently during postseason too, for some reason. I mean, we saw his power. We haven't seen that much all year, and he brought that to the championship. But yeah, I think this team is really good. They're obviously up the middle defensively with Purify and Chufo, and then Cannarella. But Gerald swinging the bat the way he is phenomenal. I do like that they have Lucas Malstedt, and hopefully Reed Garris is able to pitch soon, because that dude's nasty. Those two at the back end, I mean, that shortens up the game so much for the starters. So I still like Clemson a lot. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. It was good to see them turn in a good week. Again, championship game notwithstanding, that I think we all can recognize was just a circumstance of the situation of they needed to win 4, North Carolina needed to win 3. They're just a little off schedule with their pitching compared to what the Tar Heels had. I was really impressed by Florida State. That's not a team that I saw a ton in person in the regular season. Obviously, I know who their guys are. I'm well aware of how good they are. But it was a little different seeing them up close. And I guess, maybe it helps when things happen like Miles Bailey hits 118 miles per hour off the bat. That's impressive, right? That is certain to make an impression. But I like them a lot. And as a matter of fact, I think these are all three viable Omaha teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the thing with Florida State too is just that Duke game. I kind of had it circled because I was like, okay, Duke's going to send out their ace. They've got pretty much, they used everyone in kind of like a bullpen game, but no one threw a lot. So I was like, okay, they're going to have a lot to match up with it. And that offense just looked incredible. And yeah, Bailey's a huge piece of that, but it just felt like everyone in that lineup was doing what it needed to do. And you get that top four and it's great. And I think, yeah, Florida State's bullpen also looked pretty sharp, which is encouraging because that's been probably the only question around them. And I think Mendez in that last start, that first time through the order, he was unhittable, like literally 9 up, 9 down. And so I think if it just lines up really nicely for them, just like it does with North Carolina, where when you have those three starters, win game 1, win game 2, go into the regional final with another guy. Like that's an easy recipe. So I was impressed with them as well.
Yeah, I didn't. I've never seen Mendez throw in person, and he really impressed me. I didn't realize his breaking ball was that good. Like it was nasty. So now with Bellini throwing well too, to go along with Jamie Arnold, it's a good recipe to have going into a short series for sure. And you mentioned the bullpen. I wish, like, I feel like Joe Charles is really good if Abraham is struggling, and Abraham's really good when Joe Charles is struggling. So can we get both of them to like dominate the same day? Or they probably can't, because if one dominates, the other one's not coming in, right? These are two really good arms that have lights out stuff at times, but then sometimes it's like, gosh, what's happening? So if they can get them solid and consistent, I think it's going to be a good run for Florida State.
Yeah, that's quite the philosophical question, right? Do you see them both because one struggles, so it's impossible to see them both at the same time doing well? I think there may be something to that. Looking ahead, we've seen the bracket. We know the regionals that ACC teams are in. Do we let me do it this way. What is your favorite? I'll start with you, Bradley, and I'll go last. What's your favorite regional that an ACC team is participating in?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Oxford with Ole Miss. Those are four good teams. And I think obviously it felt like Georgia Tech had a good argument to host. So you have Ole Miss, who's playing its best baseball right now. They go to I think they went to the SEC tournament final. You have the ACC regular season champion, who has a monumental chip on their shoulder. You have Western Kentucky, which I'm really glad they got in, because they won 46 games, but they had to win, I think they had to win their conference tournament.
Yeah.
And then you have Murray State, who also hot at the right time. Also
scores a ton of runs.
20th in the country in scoring. Western Kentucky's 43rd, Georgia Tech's 28th. Like, Ole Miss is surrounded by teams that can hit, and they can hit too. So I think it's going to be one of those like fireworks style regionals. Because Western Kentucky's pitching is really good. Georgia Tech's has been good as well. But I think once this really gets going, and if the hitters are hitting the way they are, this could just turn into a kind of an insane regional. So I'm not going to that one, but I'm definitely going to be watching a lot of it.
So do you want the regional that we think is going to be the most exciting, or the regional that we think the team is going to come out, the ACC team is coming out of?
You can give me both. I was looking for most exciting.
Well, most exciting, like, I don't know if this is most exciting. I like that Wake Forest.
The same for you. I mean, right? Like,
no. Well, I like that Wake Forest is at Tennessee.
Yeah.
That I don't care about the other two teams. I know Cincinnati and Miami of Ohio are there, but Tennessee and Wake Forest, I just think of the games they had in previous years, and I do believe that hopefully with some rest, Wake Forest's pitching will be a little bit better. But yeah, I think they can match up and they can hit some bombs there at that ballpark in Tennessee. But what I like the most is the Florida State bracket. You guys might have to tell me a little bit more about Northeastern. I know Tom Glavitt's brother is the coach there, and they pitch really well. But this bracket to me seems like Florida State should dominate this bracket in Tallahassee. You guys tell me something.
No, I think Northeastern. I'm a Northeast guy, so I will defend my Northeast teams. Northeastern is awesome. Like that team is unbelievable. Obviously 27 straight wins is not easy to do by any stretch of the imagination.
Whatever league you're in.
Yeah, but if you look at just the numbers, and granted, schedule strength, all of that stuff, that rotation is the best in the country. Like they have, Will Jones has like a sub 2 ERA, all their starters have sub 1 whips. They're all able to go deep into games. And I think that first matchup with Mississippi State will be fascinating because that ace can really, for Northeastern, Will Jones can really go. And Pico Cone's good on the other side too for Mississippi State. So I think that's going to be interesting. I think this could be, Florida State, obviously it's hot, ball carries. Like this could be just a lot of really good pitching in this one, which I'm excited for. So I wouldn't say it's an easy path for the Seminoles there.
Yeah, not quite a cakewalk. Actually, all right. Shout out loyal listener, former summer ball teammate of mine, Nick, who texted me yesterday claiming that Tallahassee might be the, in the World Cup, we always circle the pools and it's like, okay, this is the pool of death is what they call it, using air quotes. He labeled Florida State as the region of death. Because he thinks it's going to be like the most competitive and most interesting because of
Northeastern,
Northeastern, one of the hottest teams in the country, a very motivated Mississippi State team that is capable as well. I think it's interesting. I think it's a pretty interesting region. I don't know about the scariest or the pool of death type scenario, but it's a fun regional. It really is. So maybe I don't know, Gravy. Maybe you got to pick another.
So maybe I meant to say this is going to be the most fun regional. That's what I meant to say.
I've got a couple of candidates, so I'm going to cheat and name 2 brackets here.
Bradley's shaking his head.
Listen. You guys know I had Alabama and Jacksonville earlier in the year. Fell in love with Justin LeBron and that team. Hattiesburg with Southern Miss, Alabama, Miami, and Columbia, who rocks, is a really fun regional to me. That is second place. Clemson's regional is awesome for reasons that no other region could be awesome. It is full of teams that are not afraid to do things differently in order to win. And I think that makes it super exciting. So you've got Clemson, West Virginia, Kentucky, College World Series participants last year, who we know kind of their deal and their style and identity is difficult on opposing teams. And then I did Big South Championship games throughout the week. I was back and forth between, they were in High Point and ACC was in Durham. USC Upstate won the Big South very easily. They score runs. They do it a number of ways. They've got guys on their team who will hit a home run and bunt for a single in the same game in instances. I think it's a very formidable 4 seed. And this bracket excites me because USC Upstate has made the tournament for the first time in their program's history. They're nearby. Clemson is not far from Spartanburg. I think they're going to travel, and it makes for a fun, really fun regional. West Virginia's going to travel. We saw a great crowd of Mountaineers last year in a super regional in Chapel Hill. I just think that one stacks up to be maybe the most fun. And the Doug Kingsmore crowds and environment is for sure part of that. Maybe just the drama magnet that is Clemson baseball in the postseason contributes to my feeling this way too. I just think it's going to be awesome.
Well, school's out, so they're not going to have all the students down at the visiting bullpen, right?
I mean, somebody will be down
Heckling.
there.
Somebody's going to be down there heckling.
Adults. Yeah, no, I'm super excited. I'm going to that one. So I'll have coverage of that. But yeah, I went to Clemson the third weekend of the year, second or third weekend of the year when they played South Carolina in that 3-site series. And I saw their I think it was their stadium record in attendance that game against South Carolina. And it was unbelievable environment. Like you just feel like that whole stadium's on top of you. Because they have the stands in left and they have the stands in, like, they have just this feel, and then there's music constantly playing. Like, it's a nightmare. And so I'd seen it on TV, hadn't been there in person, and now I'm super excited to see it in a regional environment. And I think all the points you made are good points. Like, I feel like a lot of people have written off West Virginia a bit because of how they just have not played well down the stretch. Like, a 2-week sample after winning, almost every game. Like, they were 39-7, and then they just kind of fell off. But that's a team that for a while felt like a hosting lock. Like, they hadn't played a lot of teams, but they were probably going to win, just kind of cruise down the stretch, but that didn't happen. And then Kentucky is one of those teams that's better than its record. That's the only reason they're in the field, because of, you look at their strength of schedule in conference play, and an upstate can really hit. So I'm super excited for that one too.
So West Virginia, that's who North Carolina beat last year, right?
Yeah, in the super regional. Yeah.
Yeah. So do they still have that little lefty that was that pitched for them, that was like thumbing things up there and like had them held down for a while? Gosh, I can't remember.
Oh, Derek Clark.
Yeah.
No, he's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see his his act. It was pretty funny.
So that'll be a good one. I'm really, really excited about that. And anything else stand out from like the selection show, Bradley? I mean, I guess it sounds like we're all pretty close to universally in agreement that nothing terribly egregious occurred with the selection. What was maybe jarring to you? I know we maybe have the similar feelings on North Carolina at the 5, even though it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Is there anything else seeding wise or inclusion, exclusion of a team wise that jumps out?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like to me, I see again Northeast. Like, I see a school like UConn. That's a team I think belongs in. And I think that we're in a situation now where conference schedules are under a microscope, which is tricky because, yes, you want to make sure you get the best teams in, but you're also kind of handling the fact that the teams can't pick, obviously, who they play in conference play. So, like, Kentucky's rewarded for getting the challenging SEC schedule. And yes, they won the series with Tennessee and they swept Oklahoma. Like, they have good wins. But, they're 13th in that conference. Georgia Tech, finishes first. They have, third easiest schedule. They're rewarded by, again, something they didn't get a pick. They're rewarded by going to Ole Miss, even though, they finished first in the regular season. And I think that's tough to like look at. And then of course, with the Kentucky stuff, they're not even in the last 4 in. Like, Kentucky went 13-17 in the SEC and was solidly in. And that worries me for, sort of the future. Like, if Texas A&M didn't, get swept by Missouri and kind of struggle down the stretch, they're in based on that easily. And so then you have, 14 and there's just no space for non-power, non-SEC, ACC, even Big 12 schools to get an at-large. So then you just have this large chunk of the country that's playing for one spot in their conference. Like, the Big East should not have been, in my opinion, a 1-bid league. Like Creighton's a great team, but UConn and Xavier are also very good teams.
Yeah.
And Xavier, the flaws in that with, they scheduled really hard, but they didn't, win a lot of games in that stretch. I just think I think we're just putting these mid-major or, smaller school coaches in a spot where no matter what they're trying to do, and even if they do pretty well with what they've scheduled, like Xavier did really well overall, they just don't have a chance, because like when you have a conference like the SEC where every weekend you're just piling your RPI, it's not gaming the RPI, but it kind of is, where they're all going to finish pretty high up. And the committee clearly is saying, okay, by putting the top 4 SEC, like they're like SEC clear. And I don't want to sound like I don't think the SEC is good. I think the SEC is the best conference. I think it's a great, deep league, but I just have a problem where a team finishes that low down, and a team like UConn or Xavier, which, UConn last year was in a super, like that is a good program. Like we're not saying, oh, just, bump these, put these in just for the sake of it. That is a good program that is consistently good and just at a disadvantage. And I think it's tough for me to see that. And I know like the prevailing sentiment is the committee got pretty much everything right, but I just can't, I don't feel like that when a team like that, or even a Xavier, is left out for, just another team buried in the standings of a bigger conference.
I want to talk about more of this broad scope stuff. First, we've got to let listening ball players know to upgrade your swing with the 2025 Soldier Tank Series from Soldier Sports. The BB Core model is built with infused power alloy technology and an ultra hot sweet spot that packs power even on mishits. If you're looking for extra control, the 2-piece BB Core version delivers extreme whip and leverage. And for rising stars, the USSSA Youth Bat brings elite performance in a youth-friendly design. Backed by 2.5 years of research, it's time to drop tanks with the tank. Visit soldiersports.us. I have thought about sort of we don't know if this is setting precedent for future committees, because the fact of the matter is the committee is a different compilation of people every year, and how they view criteria is going to be different on a year in, year out basis. You could argue that's part of the problem. I with you saw those initial top 4 seeds announced about 30 minutes before they went to the air with the selection show, and not seeing North Carolina there. Look, I get it. And people in my mentions, I understand the reasons that they are using to justify that. It doesn't mean it absolutely makes sense. I just thought it spelled doom for ACC bubble teams, and it turns out I was right. Mm-hmm. And it pointed to a pattern of some other interesting decisions. I think broadly there is, and it's tough to avoid this because you got to have reasons for everything. There are some conflicting ideas that are reasons or used as reasons to justify one thing and not another. As an example, I thought Troy is a team that in our D1 baseball top 25 was ranked in the preseason and remained in the top 25 until the last weekend of the season. Regular season. They got swept by Southern Miss. I get it. They got another chance in the conference tournament against the same Southern Miss team and could not capitalize. I get it. 0-4 against the same team. You had your opportunities. But are those 4 wins not part of the equation that gives Hattiesburg a regional? Right? I mean, it was a top-heavy Sun Belt. So basically your performance against the other 2 of Southern Miss, Coastal, and Troy was what was going to matter the most, right? You use those 4 wins to justify putting Southern Miss as the 16th regional host. And again, as by nature of the situation, those 4 wins are used in the case for one team. So if you're pointing at Troy in that instance and saying, look, they beat a good Troy team 4 times in a row, how do those losses really count for that much against the Trojans? It's just there's some inconsistencies there that I think are part of it. And as a result, the Sun Belt did not receive the respect that I think a lot of us thought that they deserved, with Coastal as the number 13. And I don't know that they were going to be a top 8. I certainly thought they were probably deserving of a top 8. But 13 was that seemed pretty high or pretty low, however you want to look at it, to me. So I just there ultimately for the ACC bubble teams, there was just not enough cushion in the bubble area because we did get bids stolen in the American and in Conference USA with Western Kentucky, and there was just too much shifting there late for those teams to hang on. But there were some troubling trends, some small trends that I saw there that I hope do not perpetuate themselves going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coastal also getting Florida as the 2 seed is that's not what that team deserved, and they very well could win that. And I hope they do, because I do think there's a bit of a slight, but again on the committee, the one thing I'll give them credit is it's really hard to sort through all of these conferences. Like you said, the Sun Belt really was 3 teams and then, not a lot of consistency. But I think that was what was interesting with their justifications around the Big East, because they were it was 3 teams and then nothing. So I think it's interesting, and I know it's a very challenging job for them to sort through. And I think overall, in terms of the ACC, out of the teams on the bubble, I don't think there was any way to get Virginia and Notre Dame in. They both needed to show better in Durham, like we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. But I do think some of the seedings were a little tricky. And yeah, like you said, North Carolina, top 8, you're top 8. You're playing at home both weeks. But yeah, it was interesting. Like you said, when those 4 came out, it was okay, yeah, we see where this is going. That also, when I saw, when you see those 4, you're okay, Kentucky's in. Yeah, for sure.
You knew exactly how the bubble was going to pan out for SEC and ACC teams the second you saw that.
Can next year, when this selection show is happening, the 3 of us be on together? Because I want to hear what both of you have to say as soon as it comes on, because I kind of felt the same way, but I'm am I dumb for thinking this? But I need you 2 there with me next time. For sure.
Done. We'll do we'll do an ACC watch along next year.
Yes. You heard it here first.
Beautiful stuff. Any parting thoughts, guys, before we head into regionals weekend? Bradley, sounds like you'll be in Clemson the whole weekend. I am going to pick up the slack and maybe do a little bit of hard J journalism and write a piece from Chapel Hill. It sounds like is going to be the plan. So I'll be there to check out everyone's favorite Patriot League champion, the Holy Cross Crusaders. Shout out my former USA Baseball broadcast intern, Augie Walters, who I think I've mentioned on this show previously, pitches for Holy Cross. So that came across on the selection show. The group chat went insane. It went nuts. So I'm going to get to see Augie. And I hope he gets to pitch. We'll see.
Wait, so he was interning you, but he was still playing?
Yeah, so he wants to broadcast. So he did our internship last summer.
Nice.
In between, years at Holy Cross. But he's a senior, so the Satyrs get the Chapel Thrill draw, and thus he gets to come back to this area and see everybody. So it'll be good.
So on that same note, I'm just going to throw it out there. Luke Stevenson is probably going to be in sports media whenever he retires. That dude is very well spoken, and he's, I'm telling you, so intelligent. We had him on the other day, but listening to all his interviews, I think he can be really good at this if he wanted to, obviously.
Cool full circle thing, by the way, while we're talking about this weekend, I've got North Carolina high school state championships this weekend. They're in Burlington, which is close to Chapel Hill, which is the reason I'm able to sort of do back and forth. 2 years ago, I called Luke Stevenson's high school state championship series. So it's
really?
Like, yeah, it's an interesting full circle thing that I'm just going to go back and forth from the event where I first saw him as a member of Wake Forest High School's baseball team, and then right to Chapel Hill to watch his Tar Heels right after he won ACC tournament MVP. Pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, I'll be in Bristol this weekend, guys, because our Clemson softball team lost, and we don't have any softball teams in the World Series. So now I have to work this weekend. So.
You get to work. There we go.
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm
just
kidding. Well, yeah, I get to work. Right. I was going to work from home, but since there's not going to be anybody there, now I get to work from Bristol.
The opportunity to work from Bristol.
Yeah.
Hey, before we go, Danny, how was Peter's experience going up and hanging out in the studio last time you were up there?
Dude, I hardly saw him. He was with the makeup girl all day one day. He was with in the control room the whole day for one of the days. And the only time I really got to see him is when I took him to see the hockey guys, when I took him to see Messier and Subban. And then, of course, he's big man. Like, I'm chopped liver. So I'm like, dude, as long as you had fun, that's all I cared about. And he did. He had a blast.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
I saw the picture with PK and just figured it was a riot of a time.
Yeah. PK said, hey, go ask Messier over there. He's got like 6 rings. Maybe he'll give you one. So Peter actually thought he was going to give him one. I'm like, no, he's not giving you one. Not going to get a ring. Are you kidding me?
Fantastic.
It was great. Yeah.
All right, Bradley Smart, Danny Graves, appreciate you guys as always. For those listening that want to stay locked in for regional weekend, pay attention. ACC Extra, D1Baseball.com. Bradley's going to be at Clemson. I will spend time in Chapel Hill and might even write a little thing or two from my post there. Danny's going to be on TV on ACCN this weekend. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. So thanks as always for joining us. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week about some super regionals.